So now you've got your business case approved and you can really start developing your product. And that's really complicated, involving lots of people working together. So what you need is some project management, which is what we're going to talk about. Here is an introduction to the topic. Then we're going to later talk about Agile, Scrum, and Safe. And as always, there's much more to this topic than I can cover here, so I always recommend you do your own research and talk to an expert. So why do we need project management, and why as product managers do we care? So if you don't have a plan, if you don't have some coordination as to what you're doing, it's going to be chaos. It's going to be really inefficient, and you're going to have no idea really what you're doing. Each individual is going to be working independently, and when you don't know when you're going to get done, how much it's going to cost. That's not great for your business plan. That's not great for your company. As product managers, it's important because we've done a lot of work up to this point, but now we have to make that dream, that vision, a reality. And we have to work with everyone who's developing our actual product to make sure it happens. We have to make sure that we're communicating well what the customer wants, what the vision for the product is at every stage. So you need to understand the process so that you can work with it and work with the project managers to make it happen. And we'll see why that's actually even more important in the software world. So we can have a look at a very simple example like a carpenter. So a carpenter, someone comes into the carpenter and wants a table. That request for a table is the concept or the specification. Now, maybe based on experience, you can estimate in your head how long that'll take and how much it'll cost. And that's the planning. Then you work out the details. If it's different from one they've done before, maybe there are some changes, that's the design. You go get the wood, that's the sourcing. You build it, and maybe you adjust it as you go, that's the development and then manufacturing. And then you deliver it to the customer and get paid, and that's the sales. And that process is pretty much the same if you go to a carpenter and ask for a table now as it was in the Middle Ages. And that's the way it's been for most of human history, which is experience-based estimation. So project management is the coordination of resources to produce something efficiently. Those resources might be people or materials or tools and techniques. And the something produced might be a single thing like a building, it might be many things like cars, it could be an event like a media launch, or it could be a concept like a legal agreement or a contract or a process. Project management involves managing the process and people, planning the work, organizing cooperation and collaboration, minimizing time and resources, and maximizing results. And that all sounds very simple, but actually it's a very complicated and involved process. It's quite a hard job. And quite often project managers are trying to manage QCT. So QCT is quality, cost, and time. And the conventional wisdom is that you can't have 100% of each one of those. You have to have a balance and trade off what you want at each stage of the process to get a final result. You can't build a large structure or infrastructure without some coordination. So we know that there have been people project managing for thousands of years. Certainly the pyramids, all of the Roman construction had to have been project managed. By the Industrial Revolution, this became increasingly difficult as projects became more complex, the pace of technological change increased, and the role and the processes started to be more structured. So you can see that from things like Isambard Kingdom Brunel and his bridges and his ships. In 1917, Henry Gantt created the Gantt chart, which is a core tool that we use today still for visualizing the planning and the process. And things accelerated even more, and by the 1950s, formal methods, formal training, and institutions like PMI were developed. Traditional project management is quite well established, but still being developed now, and it's also known as Waterfall. It's known as Waterfall because one thing leads to another, so it's sequential. Generally, there's a flow, a directionality of time in traditional project management. And in this type of traditional project management, you're managing something that has been done before. Maybe there are changes, but the changes are small. So generally everything's known. You know how to do what you're doing. And it's a well-defined process. So there's low uncertainty. And you expect that what you're going to be starting out with is what you're aiming to finish with. So now we're going to talk about some common concepts. So one of them is, like I said, Gantt charts. Gantt charts are very useful for planning. So a Gantt chart is a visual representation of the blocks of time that processes take and how they connect together. So, for example, you might ask all of the people who are going to be working on your project how long it'll take and how much resource it'll take to do their step, and what they need before to be finished and what comes after them. And you can connect these together, and then you can identify the critical path. So the critical path is the chain of events which have to happen on time and efficiently so that everything works up to deliver your product on time. Some other things might change if they're not on the critical path, and they don't matter as much, but those critical path items are really important. In terms of the process, at the beginning you have a concept, a spec, a business case, and then you kick off the real project. Then you have the planning and estimation, which is very heavily involved with the project management. Then you have the design, the development, and the manufacturing, and at the end of it you have the sales. There's also sourcing and marketing. Those ones can overlap several of the steps. But what's really important about traditional project management is you have gateways or milestones between each one of those stages, because each one of the next stages is going to be increasingly more expensive and involve more people, and you want to make sure that everything's okay before you move on to the next one. And traditionally, these are quite like being at school, being brought in front of the teacher. You know, you have to present, yes, sir, I've done all my homework. And if you haven't done all your homework, you get yelled at or get told to go back and do it again. So these are formal processes, formal meetings, these milestones. To do that estimation, like I said, with the Gantt chart method, you can ask everyone to submit how long they think everything will take at the planning stage. You probably have an idea of when you want your product to be ready. So then in the planning phase, there's a constant rehearsal or negotiation where the teams are coming and saying how much time they think it's going to take or how much it's going to cost. And then the project managers and the bosses are coming back and saying, well, we need you to make it shorter. And at the end of it, you end up with a plan at the very early stage, which says when you're going to be ready and how much it's going to cost. And you're always going back and checking against that plan and adjusting if you need to, but checking against that plan. And if you work in a company where you are working on only one product, probably you have line reporting. So each department has a team who reports to a manager for design, for engineering, something like that. But most companies have multiple projects. So then they have matrix management, where each one of those line managers has several different teams, and those different teams are working for different projects who have their own project leaders. So that's the structured, formalized, traditional waterfall project management. In the next video, we're going to talk about agile project management. Thanks.